Hey, it's Mo Egger. If you love sports, man, this is a great time of year. You've got college football, the NFL, and of course, college basketball. And there's no place to watch all the games than Long Neck Sports Grill. 3 locations in northern Kentucky, Wilder, Hebron, and Richwood. They've got 4K TVs all over the place with the sound on for all the big games. Plus, the menu is fantastic. You've got to try the wings, and no place has a better beer selection. Long Neck Sports Grill. Stay late. Come often. We've done this every Wednesday during the football season, chatting with one of the experts at OrthoCincy, talking injuries. Love OrthoCincy. They've got specialists at locations throughout the tri-state. They've also got walk-in orthopedic urgent care weekdays 9 to 9 and Saturdays from 9 until 1. You can learn more at orthocincy.com. That's orthocincy.com. Dr. Amelia Wiggins is with us from OrthoCincy. Lots of offseason injury questions. Let's start with, I think, the biggest one, which is La'el Collins. ACL and MCL tear kept him out of the postseason. And I think significant questions about whether or not he's going to be ready for the 2023 season opener. And obviously more pressing, perhaps, training camp. Let's start with him. Give us an idea of what his offseason path to the playing field looks like.
Yeah, well, so he tore his ACL and MCL, and of course I don't know, with surgery if they had to reconstruct the MCL as well, but after an ACL reconstruction, they'll start getting him moving right away after surgery. They'll start doing balance and strengthening, getting his range of motion back. That's usually the first 4 to 6 weeks is just working on balance and strength, and then as that ACL starts to heal, then they'll start doing more strength training. They'll have him probably running, pivoting, cutting, by 3 to 4 months, and then really work on more functional rehab by 4 to 6 months, and hopefully back on the field by the start of next season, 9 months to a year after ACL surgery. But with the pros, they'll start moving him right away.
I think with La'el specifically, there's concern about the injury he suffered toward the end of the season, but this is the latest in a long list of them. He has dealt with a back issue, labrum tears, had a forearm fracture a couple of years ago. How much should we be concerned about his accumulation of injuries?
Well, I think he'll be okay. I think we've talked about this before. It's a hard job. He's a professional athlete. He gets beat up all the time on the football field. And so these things are going to happen. He's going to have back problems, labral tears, a forearm fracture. You can't do much about that. But I'm actually hopeful for him, that this will be a chance to recover fully. He can really go back. A part of the ACL rehab is really focusing on your core strength, your hip strength and mobility. So hopefully he can take the time to go through a full body recovery, and then that'll help his back issues and everything else.
Stay on the offensive line. Jonah Williams suffered a dislocated kneecap on 2 different occasions. Week 6 in the regular season against Baltimore, the right knee. He came back and he played that game. Not so much in the wildcard game, suffered a left kneecap dislocation, left that game, and then never came back. His status was officially week to week. Give us an idea of what his offseason might look like.
So that depends on, what his MRI would look like. When the kneecap dislocates, the ligament that holds that in place is called the MPFL. So one we don't hear about too frequently, but that one often gets stretched. If that is just stretched, then we can treat it conservatively, which is exactly what happened with his right knee. So a lot of therapy to get his motion and strength back, a brace to hold that kneecap in place, and, good to go anywhere from, 4 to 6 weeks or so. If that ligament is fully torn, specifically off of the bone, then sometimes those have a harder time healing. There's a lot of other factors that can go into play as to why somebody would need surgery after a kneecap dislocation. So if he needs surgery after a kneecap dislocation, then we would be looking at a 3, 4, maybe up to a 6-month recovery. But I'm hopeful, that he'll be back out there soon.
Do you think there's a reason why he seems in particular susceptible to this type of injury, or is it just bad luck?
Well, there are reasons why he might be susceptible to this. The way the skeleton develops, some of us have a more shallow groove. If you think about the kneecap, it tracks on the femur in the trochlea, the groove of the femur, and there are different types of trochlea. Some people have a very deep trochlea, a deep groove, and so that kneecap is quite stable. So those kneecaps rarely ever pop out. And then some people have a very shallow groove, and so then what develops is a very shallow patella or kneecap, and then that can dislocate a little bit easier. So since he's dislocated his right side, now he dislocated his left side, I would say that there are some aspects to his personal anatomy that have maybe predisposed him for this type of injury, but that usually also means that we can treat them conservatively for the most part.
Another offensive lineman, Alex Cappa, suffered an ankle injury. Now, he says had the Bengals won this past Sunday, he would have been good to go for the Super Bowl. There would have been 2 weeks in between. The boot was off during those last few practices before the AFC Championship game. So I think we could all feel pretty good about him returning for the start of the season if he avoids aggravating the injury or suffering a re-injury. How can he avoid doing those things?
By taking his time up front. After any ankle sprain, first you got to heal the ligaments, get the swelling down, but then the biggest thing to recover and to minimize your risk of recurrence is working on your proprioception or your balance. After an injury, your brain loses that connection to the extremity. So you put your ankle, you plant your foot, and you think it's in one position and it's in a different position. You're going to end up rolling it. By doing his rehab with his athletic trainers and therapists, he can retrain that balance and the connection from the brain down to the ankle, and then that'll help minimize his risk of re-injury.
Let's talk about Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd came out of the game on Sunday with what they say is a left thigh injury. Now, obviously, with the season ending, there's no follow-up. There's no injury report this week. My mind went to quad. Is that the most likely thing we're dealing with here? What are the possibilities when you hear thigh injury?
Yeah, thigh injury. Yeah, you're exactly right. My brain goes immediately to a quadriceps strain or a hip flexor injury. He might have pulled his muscle there, which is common in explosive movements. And so hopefully that's just a couple weeks of rest and then a lot of rehab in the off season. He should be back good as new.
Want to talk about Brock Purdy of the San Francisco 49ers. This great story, quarterback. He starts the NFC Championship game, and then he suffers an injury on the sixth play in the game against Philadelphia. Yeah. He has a UCL tear, so that obviously would have ended his season. He's going to have surgery, but because of other injuries to other quarterbacks, he actually came back into the game. Now, he only threw 2 passes, and they weren't deep downfield throws, but let's start with that. What further risk was there? What could have happened to him coming back while dealing with an injury that is going to require surgery?
Right. That he definitely could have injured that worse. With the UCL, typically when you injure your UCL, we see that more in baseball pitchers. So it's more of a chronic injury. And so by the time they do end up on the operating table, it needs a full reconstruction or the Tommy John surgery. When you have an acute UCL injury, that is a type of injury that we can repair if there's enough tissue there and it's of good quality. And then the recovery is faster. So with him going back into the game, he could have injured those fibers worse, which would make him not eligible for the repair. So I hope that's not the case for him. I hope they're still able to repair it. That would definitely be best case scenario for him. But he did take a risk there, but you got to do what you got to do.
Let's look ahead now. Can we expect him to be ready for training camp? What does his offseason look like?
I hope so. It really depends on which surgery they end up doing. Of course, I wouldn't know that until, after you see an MRI and even get in there and see the tissue quality. But like I said, with the acute injuries to that UCL, you do have the potential option of repairing the ligament. So he would keep his own ligament, and then they usually back that up with what's called an internal brace or an extra type of fixation to help stabilize the elbow. And the recovery on that is 6 months. So definitely back, for preseason. If the recovery is beyond repair and he needs that full Tommy John surgery where we put an allograft or a reconstruction of the full ligament in, then that would need to heal in, which takes longer. And that recovery, of course, is closer to a year. So, then he could potentially miss the entire season.
I wish we were talking about the Bengals dealing with injuries as we get set for the Super Bowl. As it is, it's mostly season-ending stuff. Yeah. You've been great all year long. I'm sure we'll chat during the offseason. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. It's always good to talk.
Always good to have you, Dr. Amelia Wiggins, OrthoCincy. Go to OrthoCincy.com. The great thing about the people at OrthoCincy, they've got specialists and locations all across the tri-state, including walk-in orthopedic urgent care weekdays from 9 to 9, Saturdays from 9 to 1 in Edgewood and Eastgate. Definitely easier, certainly cheaper than going to an ER when you've got an urgent orthopedic injury. Go to OrthoCincy.com. That's OrthoCincy.com. Hey, it's Mo Egger. If you love sports, man, this is a great time of year. You've got college football, the NFL, and of course, college basketball. And there's no place to watch all the games than Long Neck Sports Grill. 3 locations in northern Kentucky, Wilder, Hebron, and Richwood. They've got 4K TVs all over the place with the sound on for all the big games. Plus, the menu is fantastic. You've got to try the wings, and no place has a better beer selection. Long Neck Sports Grill. Stay late. Come often.